Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, as everyone knows, Donald Trump fired his chief political strategist, Stephen Bannon. And I just want to take some time right now to talk about the situation. I want to talk about my position on it. I want to talk about why he got fired. And I'm also going to talk about how really this is no cause for celebration. And the first thing I'm going to start off by talking about is just the dysfunction in the White House. Stephen Bannon is just the latest of several people who have been fired recently from this White House. I mean, you had Michael Flynn, the National Security Advisor, fired. You had Sean Spicer, a press spokesperson, fired. You had Reince Priebus fired, the Chief of Staff. You had this guy, Anthony Scaramucci, fired, who was the Communications Director. So there's been a lot of dysfunction in the White House. You had infighting in the White House, different staff members fighting with other staff members. You had factions going on. You had the problem of leaks to the media that were damaging to the White House. You have a lot of chaos and confusion going on in that White House. And that speaks to the lack of political experience of Donald Trump. You know, it speaks to his inability to select and hire the appropriate people. I mean, here we're talking about a man who had zero political experience before he was elected president of the United States. I mean, this man hadn't even been a city council member. But yet this is the man that the American people elected to be the president of the United States. A man with zero political experience. A man who has no clue what he's doing. So you have all this chaos and confusion and dysfunction in the White House right now. And the removal of Steve Bannon is just the latest example of that. I mean, the fact that this man is not able to make sound decisions in terms of who's going to be on his staff, unable to make sure that his staff is cohesive, unified, and on the same message. I mean, this man doesn't even exercise personal restraint or personal discipline. So how could we actually expect this man to have a functional White House? I mean, this is a man who can't even control his impulses to tweet out nonsense on Twitter. This is what you get when you select these kind of people to be president. But I'm glad that he fired Steve Bannon. As you know, I've done several videos condemning Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is a white supremacist. They refer to him as a part of the alt-right, but really that term alt-right is just a euphemism. It's a kind way of calling somebody a white supremacist because that's what this man is. This man bragged about making Breitbart the platform for the alt-right, a platform for anti-Semitism, a platform for racism against black people. That's what he brags about. He's on record making anti-Semitic statements. You know, he supports policies that are backwards and racist. I mean, he supported the Muslim travel ban. He supported shrinking bureaucracy in the federal government, which means eliminating key social programs that black people benefit from. This man has encouraged the elimination of various regulations that the public benefits from. This man actually encouraged Donald Trump to stand by his impulses on this Charlottesville situation. And this is according to the Washington Post. Oh, actually, it's the New York Times. According to the New York Times, and I'll post a link to that article in the description box for you to read it. But this is what they say. I mean, at a time when the nation should be united against hatred, at a time when we should be uniting people of all races, here you have Stephen Bannon encouraging Donald Trump to go with his impulses. Donald Trump's impulses told him basically to sympathize with the white supremacists. His impulses told him to rationalize their decision to protest the removal of these Confederate statues. His impulses told him that there were some very fine people participating in those white supremacist protests. But this is the advice that he got from Steve Bannon, to go with his impulses. So for those reasons, I'm glad to see Steve Bannon go. I'm glad to see him go. Now, I just want to talk about why he got fired. I mean, he got fired for a couple of reasons, but I guess the number one reason that stands out to me comes from the 48 laws of power. The first law is never outshine the master. And that's what this guy Steve Bannon did. He began to outshine the master. There are reports of people depicting him as being the mastermind behind many of the key decisions Donald Trump makes. I've seen cartoons depicting him as like the puppet master over Donald Trump. And that made him outshine Donald Trump. You know, he's received a lot of attention in the press, outshining Donald Trump. And then recently he did an interview with a liberal outlet called The American Prospect. And not only did he outshine Donald Trump, this man actually openly criticized his boss. I mean, he talked about how there is no military solution to the North Korea situation. And this comes after a time when Donald Trump was talking about fire and fury, talking all this military talk, you know, beating the drums of war. He basically said there is no military solution. He said that if there was some kind of military attack, like 10 million people would die in North Korea within 30 minutes. So he basically said that's not even an option. Military attack is not an option. Criticizing Donald Trump. He also boasted about possibly firing people in the Department of Defense, the State Department, and the Treasury. He talked about them wetting their pants in fear of him removing them from their positions. So there he is, publicly exposing conflicts within the Trump administration, publicly undermining Trump's statements about North Korea. And then also what he did is, despite the fact that he's with the alt-right, he insulted the alt-right. You know, one of Donald Trump's key bases, you know, one of the key corners of support for Donald Trump. He called them losers. He said they were a fringe element, a collection of clowns. And I think that all this stuff together contributed to him getting fired. And then he also had conflicts with Donald Trump's son-in-law. You know, they had differences in policy positions and they had personal issues. For instance, Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is more of a globalist, an internationalist, and Steve Bannon is more of a nationalist. You know, he's more of a the kind of person that's against intervention and all that kind of stuff, more of an isolationist. So you had ideological conflicts between them and personal conflicts. So if you have a conflict with your boss's family members, then it's going to be likely that you'll be fired. And the fact that Donald Trump has his family all involved in his politics, that just speaks to more of this dysfunctional nature of this White House. I mean, a White House shouldn't be governed with nepotism. It should be governed based on who has the best skills to take various positions. I mean, these people don't have any political experience again. So, and also, you know, I think that Steve Bannon was a convenient fall guy after this debacle in Charlottesville, Virginia, you know, after Donald Trump being fiercely criticized for his ridiculous statements on the issue, for sympathizing with these white supremacists. He was a convenient fall guy because many people, including myself, identify him with the alt-right and the white supremacists and all this and that. And this is a way to say, well, I'm not against these, you know, I oppose white supremacists. I'm getting rid of this guy. You know, it's an indirect way of doing so. So he's basically making this guy, Steve Bannon, fall on the sword over this Charlottesville situation. But this shouldn't be any cause for us to celebrate, really. You know, I'm glad to see him go. You know, that's one less white racist in a position of power in the White House. But he wasn't the only person. He is not the only person with ties to the alt-right that's been in a position of power in the Trump administration. Another person is Sebastian Gorka, who's the deputy assistant to the president. This man has a history of having ties to the alt-right, to anti-Semitic and racist groups. He's supported like anti-Muslim positions, anti-Semitic positions. This man has downplayed the threat posed by white supremacists, even after the events in Charleston, where that Dylan Roof killed like 9 people. You had this man, Gorka, downplaying the significance of these white supremacist groups, downplaying the threat of these white supremacist groups. So yeah, I mean, so you still have someone from the alt-right in the White House in a position of power and authority. And Steve Bannon leaving the White House, all he's going to do is go back to his position with Breitbart News and use that position to still influence the decisions of the president. One good thing that comes from this is perhaps, these white supremacists, they will be in conflict with the White House. And that's a great thing to see our enemies declare war on each other. Shortly after this decision, you had someone from Breitbart News basically saying they're declaring war because of this decision to get rid of Steve Bannon. Because it creates the perception that Donald Trump basically used these white supremacist idiots to get elected. And then once he got elected, he's throwing them under the bus by firing one of their own, by firing one of their chief people. So I hope that this does fuel conflict between them. I hope that it causes them to lose faith and hope in this guy. And then hopefully he won't be reelected. I hope this undermines his chances for a second term. But yeah, this is this is an important development. Tell me what y'all think about this, man. I'm glad to see Steve Bannon go, but again, this is no cause for celebration. The fact that this man is gone, that's not the end of this threat of the alt-right movement, of these white supremacists. They're still holding their demonstrations, and there will be more violence. It's just a matter of time. They have planned demonstrations all over this country around this various issues, including the removal of these Confederate statutes. And my next video will be about their planned protest. So tell me what you all think. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.